Okay, we're finally getting to the El Paso video. I'm gonna try to make this short, but this could be a series of videos. I'm gonna leave. Can you let me have the option of deciding whether or not to do that? Because at the library that I go to, there are several older books about El Paso, including talking about the first Mexican-American mayor, which I think would be very interesting. But this one is just going to be an overview of Texas. So that's what I'm going to be referring to here. This is going to be as short and to the point as possible, just to kind of talk about the overall views of El Paso and go from there. So that's what we're going to try to do with this. So with that, let's go ahead and jump right into it, shall we? So before we go any further, let's go ahead and show where El Paso is in relation to the rest of Texas. So as we can see, it's way out in the western part of Texas there, on the very edge, the tip of it, I guess you could say. And on the other side of the border, you have Ciudad Juarez. Excuse me for my pronunciation. No habla español, por favor. So we're going to go ahead and talk about let's go ahead and start with that issue first, between El Paso and Juarez. Catch myself before I went further. It's Ciudad Juarez, excuse me. So my pronunciation needs some work. Once again, apologies. It's sad that I've lived in Texas since I was 10 and I still can't speak Spanish that well. So anyway, let's go ahead and carry on, shall we? So beyond that, let's go ahead and continue on. So Ciudad Juarez has about 1.5 million residents who can cross, and it's kind of, dare I say it like this, but it's kind of the other side of El Paso. So Ciudad Juarez has about 600 manufacturing plants and is considered a city of the future, even though the crime rate is fairly high and there is a Juarez cartel that does exist. I'm going to leave that ambiguous because I believe that, let's be careful about any sort of prejudices. I'm going to take the centrist view here. But in general, Juarez is a fairly well-to-do, I'm going to say this. It has a fairly well-developed city. And even though that there is a lot of narcotics trafficking linked to the Juarez cartel, the city is fairly important, I think, in a lot of ways. Include that, Ciudad Juarez is a metropolis absorbing more new industrial real estate space than any other North American city. State of Chihuahua is frequently among the top 5 states in Mexico with the most foreign investment. It's a technology hub and everything else. So regardless of the troubles that go on, you're looking at a city that is growing. But this is not about Ciudad Juarez. This is about the other side, which is El Paso. But I think it's important to talk about Juarez a little bit and the issues that go on, because obviously there's a border crossing right there. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk a little bit about Fort Bliss as well, which is included, of course, in the larger El Paso, I guess you could say, Metroplex, I guess you could say, kind of loosely speaking. So Fort Bliss is another one of these places where a lot of disappearances have occurred of soldiers. This is the same thing with Fort Hood as well, and other military bases. Very, very tricky thing, and I imagine that eventually, some sort of story is going to come out. But yeah, Fort Bliss being a large military post, primarily focusing on missile defense. Now this is kind of a split mission because Fort Sill, Oklahoma, although it is home of the artillery and technically, at least as far as I know with the United States Army, technically missile defense, I think, is wrapped up in artillery, but I think it's a little more complicated. Also, the 1st Armored Division is located at Fort Bliss and is the largest in terms of landmass, I believe 1.12 million acres of training facility, which is a little bit larger than the national training facility, I believe, out in California that is used by the United States military. I thought I mentioned this beforehand, but just to be safe, So there's El Paso County, or county as we would say, and El Paso the city, because El Paso County just entails all of, includes some other cities as well, including Hidalgo and other cities like that, but just to be safe, I do want to mention that up front. But as we can see here, we're going to talk a little bit about the railroad system that exists in El Paso, which is very strong. The city historically had its own railroad, or at least it was named. The city had a railroad named after them. These include the El Paso Northern Railway, El Paso and Northeastern Railway, as well as the El Paso and Southwestern Railroad. Now, these are defunct, both of these, but these kind of imply the history of railroads, obviously being way out on the edge of, kind of the middle of nowhere, really. That's why, obviously railroads are still a big matter in El Paso. Okay, I don't want to get too lost in the weeds here, but I will go ahead and just name some other neighborhoods, and which I may explain later on. But let's go ahead and go through these right quick here, just to kind of give a gauge of it. So the neighborhoods kind of go like this in El Paso. Is you have downtown and central El Paso, northwest El Paso, west central El Paso, northeast El Paso, east El Paso, Mission Valley, and this includes another neighborhood called the El Segundo Barrio, or the second, Spanish for the second neighborhood, also known as South El Paso. And it's much more of the I'll just say Mexican, for lack of a better term, area. Shares much of its history with another southern neighborhood, Chihuahuita, excuse me, but yeah. So yeah, that kind of gives a gauge of that. Now, I may do individual videos talking about these neighborhoods a little bit, but it's very, this is a very diverse thing. But in general, there's a lot to cover, and this is just kind of an overview of El Paso. I know I probably should have covered this up front, but I'm going to go ahead and just cover it now. So El Paso has kind of it has a pretty big population of 800,000 residents. Mostly oil, from what I've seen here. I'm just kind of looking briefly. A lot of oil. There's a lot of, services here. A lot of, I know I do realize Hispanic is more of a political term and isn't really necessarily an appropriate term for ethnicity. I do realize that, but that's how it's described. Also, the headquarters of Fred Loya Insurance, which is a fairly big company in Texas. You can find Fred Loya in most big cities, and it's a big car insurance company that exists. So there is that, and a lot of trade, obviously. Obviously, right across the border, you have Ciudad Juarez. So you have, a lot of trade coming in. You're talking, billions of dollars worth of trade coming in. Okay, this was a very cursory look, very brief look at El Paso. Admittedly, I kind of forced this video out a little bit. I wasn't sure exactly how it was going to look, but I hope that you guys can explore a little bit from the topics I talked about and kind of go from there. Not necessarily talking about a specific class analysis or anything else like that, but just kind of an overview. And I may talk more about specifics later on about El Paso, but I do feel like this is a gold mine for a lot of information to be taken from it. But unfortunately, I'm kind of in different zones. I'm actually doing a project talking about Colombia, so I feel like, somewhat getting pulled in other directions. So hopefully we can I can get some more videos out about El Paso. So hopefully y'all can stick around for that. So see you later, and goodbye.